the sports you do and don't know, both within and surrounding Baltimore. Don't ask him about preseason games, oh no, stuffing things in Griffin Basso. Despite it being on the internet, he can call it what he wants. Glenn Clark Radio. Glenn Clark Radio. Glenn Clark Radio. Duke sucks.
Yeah, a dramatic decision did not come about in the matter of minutes, Tom. It really was the product of several conversations between Eric DeCosta, the general manager, between John Harbaugh himself, between players soliciting plenty of opinions from players, from coaches. And yes, it did seem like John Harbaugh himself, to my understanding, was surprised, felt he was in good standing, wanted to run it back with his current staff, including the offensive coordinator Todd Monken, including defensive coordinator Zach Orr, planned to be with the Ravens for years to come until he was informed that he is out. Now, as far as why John Harbaugh is out, among the reasons, it is not just they didn't go far enough in the playoffs. My understanding, after talking to several sources involved, is that simply Harbaugh lost the locker room. But at the end, players just simply had doubts about whether or not they wanted to play for him as their head coach. The opinions of players, Judy, was valued here. It was listened to. It went to all levels, and it's not just Lamar Jackson. Now, it sounded like to me, with Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson not being on the same page, and it continued throughout the locker room, maybe not 100%, but more than enough for the Baltimore Ravens to say among the reasons to move on, this was a big one. John Harbaugh, of course, out now as Ravens coach.
So that's obviously Ian Rappaport laying out what he has gathered related to the Ravens' decision to move on from John Harbaugh. It is a Wednesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. That was courtesy of NFL Network. And no, we will not be doing Would You Rather Wednesday today.
What?
We're in an awkward spot where, like, we had been lining some things up, and some of them we'll be doing, and some of them we won't be doing, and it's just a whole.
I really wanted to lead the show with. I mean, they did it.
What's that?
Wizards got a win last night.
There you go. It's a whole deal. Some things that we had lined up we're going to do. Like tomorrow we had planned to go over to Towson. We're going to go there, but we're going to do a mix of Towson and coaching search coverage. And Friday, for example, we're going to do Dave Ginsburg's Hall of Fame ballot. We're still going to do that,
Well,
but we're going to do.
It's timely. It's
ish. Like, it's timely, but just not the most relevant. Today we had lined up the legendary Pam Ward. We're going to choose to do that. It's going to be a little bit later on in the show. We're figuring out, like, somebody would say to me, this is in radio, they would kill me for doing anything that wasn't John Harbaugh and Ravens coaching search coverage. They'd say, you don't do any of it. We'll do a little bit that isn't that. But we'll obviously be focused on the fact that for the first time in nearly 20 years, the Ravens are in the market for a head coach. What do I know is a question that I've gotten a lot. And in part, one of my problems yesterday was I was doing so many shows that I didn't have as much time as I wanted to gather information. So it wasn't until like late last night that I finally really got time to get on the phones and to talk to people. And
excuses.
Send some more texts, and I got some more texts this morning, and then I made a couple more phone calls. So I'll dive into what I know. And I'll be careful about that because it's funny. I was about to tweet something like this. There's a lot of people saying a lot of things that are coming from second or third party sources or that are being spun by people that want things to be laid out a certain way. There's one person who knows exactly what happened.
You.
Yes, correct. It's the owner of the Baltimore Ravens. There's a second person who has the second most knowledge of what happened here, and that's, of course, John Harbaugh. And then everybody else has some knowledge or can give you the information that they have. And I've spoken to people in the building, around the building. A couple of things that I've gathered. Because did you order the code red part of this? The part that was being reported yesterday that this came down to John Harbaugh said, Steve Bisciotti said fire Todd Monken, and John Harbaugh said no. I still don't know that it's that simplistic. I do think what I've gathered that I'm comfortable with is that there were some pretty deep problems between not just John. Again, the funny part being John Harbaugh was very public in his criticism of Todd Monken this year. But that there were bigger problems between the players and Todd Monken that weren't necessarily new. That it wasn't necessarily about play calling or what was happening on the field or the way he was using certain guys or who he was. It didn't really seem to have to do with that as much as it was more personality driven. And I'm going to be judicious in sharing some of the things that I've been told because I want to be careful about this. This is the part where I'm not a reporter, but I do still have some ethics. Some of what I was told was like pretty irreparable and kind of crazy that it ever got this far. And that speaks more to I don't know that it was as simple as Steve Bisciotti coming to John Harbaugh and saying, either you fire Todd Monken or moving on, as much as it was pretty clear that the Baltimore Ravens had a Todd Monken problem. And I think Steve Bisciotti was unhappy that John Harbaugh allowed it to become as big of a problem as it was. And I would say it was a pretty significant problem. And again, I don't know that it really had much to do about football. I think it was more personality than it was football, based on what I have been told. And it's funny because I had heard some rumblings about it, but I kind of dismissed them as like, hey, a lot of players are unhappy with certain, if you're not the guy thriving in an offense, you don't necessarily love the offense and you don't love the. I was dismissive of some of the things that I had heard, but they were just rumblings. And I would tell you that I was probably wrong to be dismissive of it. And credit to the Ravens for keeping things in-house, that it didn't become so public, but I'm pretty comfortable at this point saying there were some real personality issues between Todd Monken and a number of players. It wasn't unique to any one player or any one relationship, that there were some pretty serious problems between the offensive coordinator and players. And whether that could have been solved by John Harbaugh being willing to say, okay, I'll just fire Todd Monken, I don't know. I think there was some pretty serious disappointment about the fact that it got that far. I also gathered that there were some real issues, that Steve Bisciotti was a bit more demonstrative than usual about some of the results late in the season, and particularly, and it's the part that I found to be most unforgivable. I've referenced it a bunch. You can say that this season had something to do with injuries, and you had 2 home games against the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals when everything was in front of you, when you had the opportunity to seize control of the division and make it uninteresting. And you peed down your leg in back-to-back home games against mid or bad football teams. And however that happened, again, I get it. Isaiah Likely probably scored a touchdown in that game. We can sit here and do this forever.
Both games, yeah.
Well, the first one he should have scored a touchdown in. The second one he probably did score a touchdown in that didn't count. We could do this for forever. But to lose back-to-back home games against mid or bad football teams. Because I didn't get the sense the Patriots one was the one that put it over the top. I got the sense in conversation that things started to turn because of that. Because that's inexplicable. That's a franchise going in the wrong direction. And maybe it had something to do with why John Harbaugh was so defensive when he was asked about the home record ahead of the Patriots game. That was brought up to me in the last 24 hours. That Steve was particularly unhappy. Like, more so than you would expect from Steve Bisciotti. More so than he was furious after the home Steelers game. And the scene with, fans booing at home, and that the sentiment kind of seemed to start to change at that point. And it's very clear now. Remember yesterday I was doing the Brian Windhorst thing, like, what's going on? Like, why are we talking about it? It's very clear that there was something here. And that while we can all say John Harbaugh was surprised and everybody was surprised, and I would tell you that a lot of people in the building were still surprised. But there's a difference to me between surprised and stunned. And I think they were surprised. I don't know who was stunned. Because I get the sense that the sentiment had kind of turned. I had one player who said that John Harbaugh's what they saw from him on the trip back from Pittsburgh looked like someone who thought he knew, and the way that it was not like John Harbaugh. And that they felt like he knew. I also don't know how much it matters, is what I'll say. And we're all interested in gathering, and we're all interested in trying to get as much information as we can. And maybe down the road we'll hear more things, and one day, John Harbaugh would say something, and I don't know. But none of it's going to change the fact that a decision was made. And the important part to me is that none of it's going to change the fact that a decision was made that needed to be made. That's the part I can't shake. As interesting as it is, whatever might have happened in the last 48 hours or before, it was time. It was time. And while I do think more of this is centered around Todd Monken, I think that as fireable an offense was, deciding to commit to a defensive coordinator that had just continued to struggle and never get his footing, and you had an opportunity at the bye week to say, we understand how serious this season needs to be. And I know that everybody gets angry. This was brought up to me yesterday. So apparently Jason Lockenfor, who I know everybody doesn't like, but talks about how I guess he thinks that the Ravens act like they all have jobs for life, and so nothing matters. But it was brought up to me by someone in the building that it felt like there was an amount of hubris. I'm not going to fire Zach Orr because I don't have to. Because what does it matter? And that thought process, not taking this seriously, of understanding this had to be a year that mattered. It had to be. That it couldn't just be, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll try it again next year. Is insane to me. It's insane. And all of the other things that we talked about down the stretch, in hindsight, I would have liked to have Derrick Henry in there. You don't get to have hindsight about these things. This year had to matter. It had to. You couldn't have the failures of the last couple of years in the postseason and then say, well, yeah, but this year, if we come up short, so what? There seemed to be a lack of urgency that surrounded this football team. And if I was Steve Bisciotti, I'd be furious about that. It's not about personal relationships. It's about, guys, you're not taking this seriously enough. How are you in hindsight wishing that you would have taken a timeout at the end of the home Steelers game when everything was a disaster pre-snap ahead of 3rd and 2? How do you go back afterwards and say, yeah, you know what, I wish I would have done that? How do you not think in that moment, these plays all matter? Right now, we have to do this. I had one person who told me that even a week ago, that the feeling around the building, it was wild seeing that video of like John Harbaugh having players over to watch the Browns game. Like, that was wild to me. I get that they were fired up about beating the Packers, and maybe it all came about organically. I haven't dove in on that because it's not all that important. But, like, dude, you allowed your season to come down to the Cleveland freaking Browns having to beat the Steelers, and you got everybody together to celebrate that instead of being embarrassed by that? How embarrassing is that? It's embarrassing that that's what your season came down to, that you even had a hope. And I was told that there was, again, the feeling of hubris. All right, well, obviously we're going to go to Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers. And then, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll go make a run in the playoffs. It just never felt like there was an urgency that was required from this team. Oh, yeah, that's right. The NBC shared this on Sunday night. This was the video of them all. I couldn't believe this. Like, this was so... I get that it was exciting the result happened, but getting everybody together for, like, a party to watch it? Like, I don't know, man.
Well, it was like, yeah, like Baker Mayfield's wife shared, like, a picture of Baker watching the game, like watching the Saints game on Sunday, and, yeah, it just felt weird, just, like, seeing him... Yeah, like he clearly like wasn't proud to be sitting there rooting for the Saints or whatever. Is that what it was? Yeah, they were rooting for the Saints. So
like, man, if they win, they win. God bless them. And maybe it was all rookies. Maybe it was all like maybe the veterans knew better. I didn't even look to see who all was in. Obviously, you're seeing a lot of backs of heads. You're not seeing a lot of faces in that. But like,
yeah, Harbaugh's fired up.
I mean, I get it. After it happens, I understand. You got a new lease on life. But the idea of getting everyone together to watch it. Like, you're supposed to be winning a Super Bowl. And you're celebrating a backdoor chance of getting into the playoffs? That was wild to me. This needed to happen. This needed to happen. It was time. As I kept saying over and over and over again, it was time. And whatever the reasoning was, it was time. And I appreciate that the owner of the football team recognized that it was time. I appreciate that. I appreciate that the owner of the football team didn't just continue to say, well, yeah, but, you know, these guys have been around for a long time, and, you know, I'm just not going to fire John Harbaugh. I appreciate that he recognized it's time. It's time. Period. It's time. And none of it changes the reality that John Harbaugh might well go to New York or wherever he's going to go and find success as a head coach. He absolutely should be the top candidate for everyone. And as people have pointed out, the likelihood that teams that had head coaches might now think about that a little bit more if they could get John Harbaugh. I understand that. But that doesn't mean it wasn't time here. The realities of everything that was going on, the continued failures in big moments, that was what the Ravens were. It was time. And it doesn't guarantee that whoever they're going to find is going to win Super Bowls. But it was time to make a move, and the Ravens made a move. Now they got to go find a head coach. We'll be talking about it throughout the course of the morning and until there is a head coach, the Baltimore Ravens, obviously. That's going to be the predominant topic of conversation. Let's bring in a friend of ours. He covers the Ravens for the Baltimore Banner. We welcome Jonas Shaffer into the program this morning. Jonas, it's Glenn. I am sure you've just had a nice, relaxing last 24 hours with nothing to do. So I'm glad I could actually give you something to do. So, I guess maybe you should say you're welcome, or thank me, and I should say you're welcome, right?
Yeah, I was looking forward to a very chill January, but that's clearly not going to be the case.
Hey, man. Jonas, I don't really know that it matters how this all played out, and I think that ultimately this was the right thing for the Ravens to do, so it kind of doesn't concern me. Where are you between, like, surprised just because the Ravens don't do these things versus shocked? Because I would say I'm surprised, but I'm not shocked.
Yeah, I guess I would go there. Definitely surprised was the word that came to mind yesterday when everyone was asking me about it. I thought that based on the kind of evolution that we've seen John Harbaugh make as a coach, from being a guy who was kind of cutting edge defensively with the coordinators he hired, to being a guy who pivoted midseason in 2018 from most pass happy team in the league to we can adopt all these college style option concepts and make this one of the most fearsome running attacks in the NFL. The way that he pursued edges with on fourth down, special teams, everything like that would have convinced Steve Bisciotti to give this guy just one more year to figure things out. I mean, it's still pretty incredible. Like, I don't know how many times in NFL history a coach has been fired after winning a division title in 2 of the past 3 years, and they were a missed field goal away from being a three-peat. And I don't know if we would still have been here just a week away from possibly the same discussions if there were still some of those familiar breaking points or some of those familiar frictions that have been talked about by reporters between John Harbaugh and Steve Bisciotti. Maybe this was inevitably going to happen, but I just thought that because Steve Bisciotti kind of gave Harbaugh the grace after that 2017 season to figure things out, and ended up with the Ravens having some of the best stretch of regular season play in franchise history, that he would be willing to give him one more run, give him one more life draft. But clearly that didn't happen, and now you have, as Steve Bisciotti said before this past year, he doesn't really care about he doesn't care as much about the long-term outlook for his franchise as he does the short-term outlook. He wants a Super Bowl now. He's talked about how there's a window with Lamar, and clearly he thinks that moving on from John Harbaugh, the most successful coach in franchise history and one of the most successful regular season coaches in recent NFL history, is the right thing to do.
And Jonas, I think that point is important when we discuss this, because it's all true. This is a yes and, as Van Valkenburg and I were discussing yesterday. This isn't a but. It's a yes and. Like, yes, John Harbaugh was wildly successful as the Baltimore Ravens coach, but what continuously happened in the biggest games the Ravens played over the course of the Lamar Jackson era, it to me had to be a fireable offense. Like, you couldn't continue to say that it was excusable that this somehow, some way kept happening in all of the biggest games that they played, that they continued to come up short somehow, some way. And whether any of that was, how many times that was John's fault versus, obviously, he didn't tell Tyler Loop to go miss a kick on Sunday, but it just kept happening. And I don't think that you could that Steve Bisciotti could continue to say, well, that's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, we're all just trying to get inside the mind of Steve Bisciotti and figure things out, and that's a very hard place to access.
Sure.
But and like, this is a little bit before my time, but it's I think interesting to bring up because of our shared history, and also one of Steve Bisciotti's shared interests is Maryland basketball. And like, there was a portion there was a period in the mid to late 90s when Gary Williams was getting to the Sweet 16 and getting no further, and then he gets to the Final Four and he gets knocked out. And I'm sure there were a lot of people, and again, this is 2 decades ago, it's a totally different media landscape, a totally different sport, but there were a lot of people who thought that Gary Williams would never break through. And John Harbaugh, of course, already has a Super Bowl ring. Like, but if we're just thinking about the Lamar Jackson era and all this kind of stuff, like, sometimes all a coach needs is just one more run at the thing, and then he will get the ring. And I don't think Gary Williams ever did as little with as much as John Harbaugh did with the 2019 team in the playoffs, or the 2023 team in the playoffs, or even the 2024 team in the playoffs. But he was helping to put those teams in a position where they could have done something, and they just didn't. And so I think, obviously, it's been interesting to see just how little how little appreciation there is among the fan base for what John Harbaugh was as a coach. And I think a lot of that is skewed by just how poorly the season has gone and how frustrating the postseasons have been, and just the apparent friction between Lamar Jackson, who is a lot of people's favorite player of all time, and this coaching staff or whomever. But, it wouldn't surprise me at all if John Harbaugh moves on to wherever he goes, and within 3 or 4 years, that team is contending for championships. I just think that John Harbaugh has known what to do to kind of put teams above the edge, to put them in a position where they can make that leap. And I don't know that if he'd stayed here, they wouldn't have made it, but that's just a counterfactual that we don't really have to entertain anymore, because he's now out of a job in Baltimore, and the Ravens are looking for someone to even if they have a lower floor than John Harbaugh, potentially lift that ceiling that John Harbaugh has been butting up against, even with some of the best teams in the NFL.
He is Jonas Shaffer. He covers the Ravens for the Baltimore Banner. He's with us here on GCR. Jonas, obviously now the Ravens have to do a coaching search. And as I've said in digging around, I don't think they had a short list as Steve Bisciotti made this decision. I don't think he made this decision thinking about that next coach. I think that this will be a full and complete search. I don't think this is slanted towards anyone. I think that they're inclined to do whatever they have to do in order to try to find a coach.
Yeah, I mean, look in the college ranks, look in the pro ranks, look in the ex-head coach ranks, coordinator ranks, look at someone in a different sport. This is a
maybe they'll hire Coach K. That'll make all of us happy.
Yeah,
Ted Lasso.
This is an owner who made his fortune in staffing, who thinks highly of his ability to spot talent and to nurture talent. So this could be a quite drawn-out process if he wants to be as exhaustive as possible. Obviously we don't have a lot of experience with the kind of cadences of head coaching searches in Baltimore, because of just how stable the Ravens were for a long time with Brian Billick and then moving on to John Harbaugh. So only really, Steve Bisciotti and I guess to a lesser extent Eric DeCosta, Sashi Brown know what the plan is for these next couple of days, next couple of weeks. But it's going to be fascinating to see just who emerges on that radar and then who breaks through from that radar to the actual short list.
Do you have a thought on where this needs to go? I think that there are a lot of people that would say their opinion is, well, how do you trust the desire of winning a Super Bowl to someone who's never been a head coach before? It's almost kind of similar to a conversation that some Orioles fans were having about the managerial hire. And I just don't know. I keep coming back to it. I think they want to win a Super Bowl next year, but I don't think that's going to make them inclined to say it's got to be someone who's had success before as a head coach.
Yeah, I think the way that I'm most intrigued by that dynamic is, let's say someone like Robert Saleh really piques Steve Bisciotti's interest. He's a guy who, with the Jets, did not call plays for them. So he would be a potential CEO type coach, which makes sense when you think about just the kind of presence he has, the respect he garners from that locker room. You look at how the Jets defense, despite him not calling plays for them, just completely fell apart, 2 seasons ago when he got fired 5 games into that tenure there. But if we are in this window right now and you are looking to seize on the talent that is in the building right now, does that mean that you hire a specialist coach, someone with expertise on the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, a play caller for one of those 2 spots, because you can't afford to, have this window where you're trying to figure things out with whoever they hire for that side of the ball that they're supposedly the best at. Like I don't know if you can have like a John Harbaugh type come in and hire a Greg Roman type, just to kind of use a recent historical example, and say I really trust this guy to lift this offense or to lift this defense. I think you want to hire someone who is going to be a floor raiser on a certain side of the ball, whether that is taking this offense from what should be perennially top 8 to top 8 good to top 4 good, or bringing this someone who can help this defense be better than top 16 good and be top 8 good, so that you have ideally a situation where you have a offense that should always be really good, and a defense that with the right coach would be really good, and that is enough to make you one of the 3 or 4 most favored Super Bowl teams for next year. I don't know, but I think that would be how I kind of see the writing on the wall for what that next coach would be. Like you don't really have the time to worry about setting the culture, because you have what you think would be enough good people in that building, and what you just need is someone with X and O's expertise and new ideas, and maybe an ability to connect with Lamar. And
I completely agree, right? Like I think that's it. Like this is the part of this is like you still have a quarterback who has an insane amount of leverage, and I don't think he can't be involved in these conversations. I'm not saying that you're letting Lamar Jackson pick the coach, but it can't be someone that Lamar Jackson would be wildly opposed to. Like you have to get a contract extension done with Lamar Jackson somehow, some way this offseason. He has to be involved in whatever amount he's willing to be involved in this process.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is it's tough to talk about Lamar, because I think that maybe the only person as inscrutable as Steve Bisciotti is Lamar Jackson,
right.
And we just what we get about Lamar's inner life comes from coaches and players and occasionally GMs talking about it, like the fact that the last extension came together randomly because just like Lamar Jackson saw the deal for Jalen Hurts come together, and Eric reached out to him and was like, hey, would this plus whatever be interesting to you? And then it comes together while Eric DeCosta was watching that Boston Celtics like Eastern Conference Finals or whatever.
Right.
But if you are like paramount in this offseason right now, after hiring the right coach, is getting this team's books in such an order where you can take care of the guys you need to take care of before free agency comes along. Like I remember talking to Eric DeCosta a couple off seasons ago when we still didn't know whether Lamar would be coming back to Baltimore, about just how much of the long-term planning is arrested by the biggest thing a piece in your books not really being known. And you think about like how much of Tyler Linderbaum's future is tied up potentially in the Ravens, not knowing what exactly Lamar's cap numbers for these next couple of years are going to be looking like. If you want to sign Zay Flowers as early as possible to an extension, then it sure would help to know what exactly the 3 or 4 year outlook for Lamar's deal is going to be. If you want Charlie Kohler, if you want to bring back, name your kind of mid-tier guy, Pat Ricard, it sure would help to know what exactly the Lamar Jackson financial outlook is going to be. And maybe some of this is very easily managed, but just from talking to people around the league, around the castle, it helps to have, your biggest ducks lined up. And with this Lamar Jackson cap spike set to happen pretty soon and pretty dramatically, I think it's top of mind for Eric DeCosta and for Steve Bisciotti to get all this handled as quickly as possible, because so much of what this team's hopes for 2026 and 27 are resting on that.
Jonas, what am I plugging for you?
Yeah, just a lot of stuff coming out from last night, this week. It's going to be pretty nonstop coverage. Great retrospective from Charles Walker that went up last night. Obviously, he's been around the team for a long time. He knows Steve Bisciotti as well as anyone could, just from all their dealings together. He was there when Steve Bisciotti hired John Harbaugh in the first place, and good insight into what exactly might be next. And then just, I know a lot of people don't want to really have a lot of warm feelings for John Harbaugh, but I do think it is kind of worthwhile to consider all the values and the assets that he brought to the position that might not be so easily replicated with the next coach, because a lot of what he did, it's kind of hard to put a number on. You can't quantify a guy who kind of set the locker room culture or the weight room culture that he did. It's hard to put a number until recently on what he brought to special teams and the kind of defensive sim pressures, creeper stuff that are now especially in vogue around the rest of the NFL. When you look at the Seahawks and when you look at so many other places that are now playing this kind of Raven style of defense. So John Harbaugh didn't have the ending in Baltimore that he wanted, that I'm sure a lot of people in that Ravens facility wanted. But I think it's going to be, if the Ravens could find a next head coach who was even, I don't know, a half, 3/4 as influential as John Harbaugh was on the rest of the NFL, I think it will probably have been a home run hire.
I don't disagree with that whatsoever, Jonas. That's well said. At Jonas_Shaffer, that's how you follow him. Jonas, always appreciate you, brother. Obviously, we'll have a lot of things to talk about in the coming weeks. Thanks for doing this as always, man.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate you having me. Talk soon.
That's Jonas Shaffer with us here on GCR. Appreciate him taking the time. And look, I said this yesterday. I'm not going to back off of it. I think it's grotesque. Anybody who's like, I'm celebrating, and I know my friend Derek Arnold from Russell Street Report was like, I don't care. I'm smoking a cigar. I think that's weird. I just think it's a weirdo behavior. That's me personally. I can't imagine that being what gives you joy. That's a weird thing to me. I think there's lots of things that give people joy, but the idea of, a wildly successful championship-winning coach being fired being what gives you joy, again, I think there's a big difference between saying, as I feel, I think it was time, I think it was the right thing to do, I think it was necessary, but experiencing joy, I'm like, what does that say about you? I don't get that, and I won't get that. I will show great appreciation for everything that John Harbaugh did in Baltimore. And as I said a million times, I think being dismissive of the fact that the Ravens were competitive because they didn't necessarily win the Super Bowl every year, or again after 2012, is it is as detached from reality as I could imagine. Everybody wants to win Super Bowls, and it's disappointing the Ravens didn't win more. But to think that makes this valueless, to create essentially a zero-sum game, to suggest that there is no value in the fact that the Ravens were winning, were in the mix, were relevant, that is bogus, man, and pathetic. And, that is the eternal be careful what you wish for. Because Lord knows it don't always work out for you. And again, none of that means that it wasn't time or that I disagree. This absolutely was the right thing to do. But there's a big difference between that and the Ravens were failures and John Harbaugh was that's just sort of sad. That's it. Plain and simple. If you missed it, we did get together last night with Stan and Luke and KZ to talk about it. That show is available, facebook.com/PressBoxSports, youtube.com/PressBoxOnline. Stan's shows, as always, are brought to you by the Costas Inn, with two great locations. The Costas Inn, the OG on North Point Boulevard, and the new Costas Inn at the Grandstand in Timonium. Everything you love about the original Costas Inn, except they don't do steamed crabs at the new location. You got to go out to North Point Boulevard for those. And coming up on January 22nd at the OG Costas Inn on North Point Boulevard in Dundalk, you can meet 1983 World Series MVP Rick Dempsey from 6 to 8 p.m. He's going to be doing pictures and autographs, just hanging out. and celebrating at the original Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. The great Rick Dempsey, friend of the program, is going to be at the Costas Inn on January 22nd. Our next guest was in Pittsburgh and saw the Ravens season come to an end on Sunday night. I don't know if he was expecting how things were going to go from there. He is someone we always appreciate the opportunity to catch up with from Westwood One and FanDuel, and just a good guy in general. Mr. Mike Golic is back with us now here on GCR. Mike, it's Glenn in Baltimore. Appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much for doing this.
Sure, no problem. Is it still sad times in Baltimore?
I it's weird, right? Like as you would imagine, the first 24 to 36 hours were very depressing, and then I think that for the most part there was an acceptance that like maybe firing John Harbaugh. Not that I know that people wanted him fired as much as like it just might be time. I don't know that it's created an excitement because I pointed out the people that are celebrating that's some weirdo behavior, man. Like John Harbaugh was a great coach that did great things, but I think there's an acceptance of it and maybe an interest in what happens next for the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, 18 years is a long time. Obviously he and Mike Tomlin were the two longest tenured, and there was questions about both of them. Whoever lost that game, would that kind of be the end? And I guess it's been so long. Maybe some people are looking forward to change. My thought would be careful what you wish for.
Of course.
He takes you to. It reminds me of Andy Reid when Andy Reid was fired from Philadelphia in 2012. Took him to a bunch of NFC title games, one Super Bowl that they lost, and they thought, oh, we need to change this to get over the hump. Yeah, they had 4 coaches since him, and they did get to the Super Bowl 3 times. So you can decide, did it work or did it not work? But I'm not sure. Listen, he becomes the number one candidate for every opening job without question. And I would just caution people to say, like I said, be careful what you wish for and what direction you're going to go with a new coach.
I think I agree with everything you just said, Mike. And to me, it's a both things are true type of situation. And I had been reluctant, in the last couple of years when we would get callers or people would say, hey, I think John needs to go. I would almost openly laugh at them. But I did start to feel that this season. And I did come around to the feeling of I think it is time. And I think that what you just said is absolutely right. I think John Harbaugh should be the number one candidate. I think teams should go out of their way to try to bring him in. But much like you say about the Eagles, I also think that even though that, this thing where the Ravens it just almost felt like it was in their DNA. Like it was fait accompli that in the biggest games in recent years, they came up short. And maybe you'll tell me that if you think that if John Harbaugh had been back next year, that none of that matters. But it just sort of felt like at some point they had to wash that out a little bit of their DNA.
Yeah, but it's like if you look at the situation, John Harbaugh didn't drop a pass.
No doubt, or miss a field goal, right.
Or miss a field goal, but he's held responsible for that. And listen, the person that understands that the most is John Harbaugh. It's just, I just look at the situation, and like I said, I'm like, you're basically, you're not looking, Baltimore isn't looking to find somebody better. At least in my opinion, they're looking to find someone that's different and will stir the pot and try and shake things up and get the team to the next level. And listen, we'll see, because going into the season, I remember saying on my show with my son, Baltimore had the most talented roster in the league. Yep. Obviously injuries and certainly mistakes had cost them that, especially the injuries, especially with Lamar Jackson. It will be interesting what other changes are made, because the whole coaching staff will be gone. I think, and I possibly 1 or 2 kept. I have no idea, but for the most part, it's going to be wiped out, and it's going to be a whole new regime there.
Mike Golic is with us here on GCR. Mike, before I move on to what happens next, because I do again agree with you. I don't think at any point John Harbaugh ever said you should drop this ball. But there are still things that I can't shake, like the continued storyline of Zay Flowers after the Chiefs game and what happened in that AFC Championship game, and we still see the number of occasions where he's hopping around and not getting upfield, and ball security being an issue, and like Mark Andrews tossing the ball around like a wild man at the half of that Patriots game after what he's been through. some of that, I at some point I did kind of find myself like saying, I don't think John Harbaugh's saying do it, but clearly it's being allowed, and I did kind of have to put some of that on John.
Well, yeah. If he's saying not saying not saying don't do it, then obviously players feel empowered to do it. Yeah. Listen, I get that. Like I said, it's not completely not his fault. He runs the show. It was his fault when Derrick Henry didn't touch the ball with 12:50 to go in the game a few weeks ago. Of not getting him the touches. So, yeah, I mean, the head coach takes full responsibility and is responsible for the actions of their players for the most part. So, listen, I get it. And the late, great Marty Schottenheimer used to say after like 10 or 12 years, players start to look past you in the locker room because, and it may be time for a change. And, Mike Tomlin 19 and John Harbaugh 18, they've obviously surpassed those years. So maybe it is time for a shakeup. I would imagine that they'll go for an offensive coach. At least I think, though the hot coordinators this year seem to be on the defensive side of the ball. It will be interesting to see where they go because now available jobs, the Baltimore job becomes the number one job without question. So they should be able to get their pick of coaches.
By the way, we just we just shared the picture that FanDuel had shared of you, Mike, and your reaction to John Harbaugh being fired yesterday, which is I think a lot of us were feeling the same thing. Even though, again, I thought it was possible, I still was. The Ravens don't do this, right? Like this is
and it's just he's been there 18 years. Right. You just think he's going to be there. You think he's going to continue to be there
until he says otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can. I definitely can understand both sides.
Mike Golic with us here on GCR. Mike, you just brought something up, and it's a feeling that I always have. And you're right? Like the hottest names, maybe the Jesse Minters, who obviously has connection to Baltimore, was here on staff and was with Jim Harbaugh in L.A., and Jeff Hafley and Brian Flores, they're defensive coordinators. But I always have the preference that when you hire a head coach, you get an offensive guy because I live in that eternal fear of otherwise you're going to have an offensive coordinator that works out, and they're just going to depart for a head coaching job. And I don't even know if it's based in fact, but I have this belief that it's easier to find a strong defensive coordinator than it is to find a great offensive coordinator that brings the most out of your quarterback. In what you just said, do you kind of share that feeling that that's why you should try to bring in a more offensive-minded head coach?
Well, listen, I get what you're saying. I don't know if I agree. Listen, Mike McDonald is doing a hell of a job in Seattle, and he's a defensive coach. But to your point, coordinators are usually when teams are looking for fresh blood and not a retread coach, they're looking for a coordinator. And offensive coordinators, for the most part, they do go before defense. Or there's a higher percentage of offensive coordinators because, listen, the quarterback position is the most important position, so you have to make sure that position is taken care of. And if you hire a defensive coach, then the most important hire is the offensive coordinator position. And to your point, if they do a good job, they're going to be poached at some point. But you just have to kind of roll the dice, and you have to go with who you think obviously is going to work best for your quarterback, but also, who's going to establish the culture on the team as well. You can't really forsake one for the other.
I don't disagree with that, and I certainly think that there's Mike. It's funny because I don't think they made this move thinking that they have anybody in mind. I think they're going to do a very deep and thorough search in the same way that they once upon a time found John Harbaugh, ironically after they attempted to hire Jason Garrett. I sense that that's what they're going to do. I guess I'll put it this way. For a team, one of the big differences between this time and the last time the Ravens needed a coach is that at that point they had a rookie quarterback and no real expectations to win. They're doing this because they're not winning a Super Bowl. Like, can you take a first-time head coach and say,
no,
okay,
no,
okay,
no, I do not think so. I think this has to be an experienced head coach. Where that is or who that is, I don't know. But I don't think you can take a first-time head coach and put him with this veteran and talented a team and say go win a Super Bowl when it's his first time. Again, you can be a coach all you want, but the first time you sit in that head coaching chair when every question now comes to your desk, and when you're a coordinator, you're just dealing with questions on your side of the ball. When you're the head coach, every question comes to you. And I just don't think Baltimore is in a position to get one of those type of coaches who is doing all this for the first time when you have a talented roster like you do.
That's interesting. Yeah, boy, it's sort of like there's a limit. Obviously, somebody would bring up Mike McCarthy as being someone who's got all of the experience, but I don't know, man. Like, is Kevin Stefanski the correct answer then?
Well, listen, Kevin Stefanski was going to be the number one choice for the Giants. Now Harbaugh is going to be the number one choice for the Giants. And before the Baltimore job opened up, the Giants was probably the number one job, because what do you look for? You look for ownership and you look for quarterback, and the Giants, at least at this point, Jackson Dart did a nice job. He ended up in the blue tent a little much, and he's got to calm down on the running a bit, but it was successful out of him when he was on the field. So that's the probably the best job, and the one Harbaugh may go for. Maybe Atlanta, depending on Michael Penix. But that's what you're looking for. And now Harbaugh is the number one choice for every team. So if he took the Giants, Stefanski is an experienced head coach. He's an offensive head coach. I like Stefanski. I'm definitely a fan of his. So that would not surprise me at all.
Well, because I think there would be people that would just be torn, what happened with Shedeur Sanders this year, there was awkwardness there, and then just the overall record. And I know what you're going to say. That's not all on him, right? And he didn't pick, he didn't want the Deshaun Watson thing that was given to him. But can we be utterly dismissive of those things in considering?
No. But name me a coach that checks every single box.
Yeah.
There's not a coach out there that checks every single box. There's going to be some flaws, maybe some fatal flaws, but certainly some flaws in every coach. Or that coach would have an unbelievable tenure, like John Harbaugh did in Baltimore, like Mike Tomlin is having in Pittsburgh. Every coach has his warts. There's no doubt about that. You just have to dig deep, between an interview and between, what went on in the situation. You have to dig deep and find out, because a head coach is ultimately responsible for things, but there are circumstances, and everything isn't under his control.
Mike, I guess on the other element of this is the Lamar of it all, right? Where I'm not trying to suggest that Lamar picks the next head coach, because that would be insane and reckless. But you got to get a contract extension done with him, because he's set to count $74.5 million against your cap next year. And he is he's probably the reason you want to win a Super Bowl, and you've decided that this has been a failure because you have Lamar Jackson. I would think, to whatever extent he's willing to be, he at least has to be involved in this process, no?
I hesitate on letting players get involved in the situations. Now, obviously, if the player of a candidate says, "Oh, I had a bad situation," if they had a relationship before this and it was horrible, you could maybe see that. But I don't see that with, like, just say, a Stefanski and Lamar. But you're right. I mean, he's going to get himself a big fat signing bonus check, and they're going to redo his deal, and they should to keep him. You have a good group to keep together. Obviously, there'll be tinkering here and there, but it's a good group to keep together. I am always a little wary of any power you give a player in selection. Right. That doesn't mean they can't, listen or understand from ownership of who's going to be interviewed, and they can, give an input. But I don't know how much that should be taken into consideration, quite honestly.
Mike, I'll wrap with this one, because you're a trenches guy, obviously, and I think beyond whatever responsibility John Harbaugh has for what's happened, I think a lot of Ravens fans have had open conversations about maybe there's an issue with the way the team has been constructed, and that the focus hasn't necessarily been on the trenches. And the Ravens, Eric DeCosta over the years had said openly, we believe on building a defense outside in, and analytically, you can build a good statistical defense outside in. I think a lot of us have the opinion that that's not how you win close games when everything's on the line, and when it's 3rd and 10 and you need one stop at the end of the game, you're not going to get it from your secondary. You're going to have to get it up front. Do you feel like the Ravens need to shift, whoever the coach is, a little bit more focused towards the trenches and towards the defensive front and the offensive line?
I mean, for years, I've always thought you build up the spine, right? I mean, look at Chicago. They got 2 new guards and a center, and the sack total. Now, that has to do with Caleb Williams getting rid of the ball as well, but the running game has been better. The pass protection has been better. Up the middle on defense, your D tackles, your linebacker, your safety. You have one of the best in the business, obviously, in Kyle Hamilton already.
Yeah.
And listen, but the game has changed to pressure on the quarterback, edge rushers. Edge rushers nowadays used to be tweeners in my day that were too big to be linebackers and too small to be DNs, and they didn't play. Now they're the leading sackers outside of Myles Garrett. He's just a freak. So maybe it is built differently, but that doesn't mean now you have your D tackle who was out Nnamdi who was out all year. Most of the year at D tackle. Yeah. That certainly hurt. I mean, he's a huge presence on that D line. But I am kind of old school in kind of building up the spine on offense and defense.
Mike, I know it's not all you guys are going to be doing because you're doing a national show, but I imagine this will come up again with you and your son this afternoon.
Oh yeah, we actually got it right at the end of our show yesterday. So we did have as by you showing my picture of my surprise look. But yeah, we'll start to break it down a little more, and obviously look forward to who possibly will be the coach for Baltimore. What job John Harbaugh will take, because unless he doesn't want to coach for a year, he'll obviously be coaching again next year. So yeah, there's a lot of follow-up. Coordinators being fired, and interviews will be starting. It's a never-ending cycle in the NFL, that's for sure. And oh, by the way, there are playoffs starting.
Yes, correct. Are you going to be somewhere this weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to be Green Bay at Chicago for that third meeting in 6 weeks. So that should be a good one.
Of course, Golic and Golic on FanDuel Sports Network and Westwood One, where you find him. Mike Golic, always appreciate you, brother. Thank you for spending the time with us today. We really appreciate you doing it.
No problem.
Mike Golic with us here on GCR. That's interesting, right? Like his opinion is sort of what my opinion was in the Orioles managerial search. Mike Golic's opinion is you need an experienced coach. That you're not expecting a first-year coach to come in here and win a Super Bowl. And I understand that thought process. It's very, very rare that a first-time head coach has won a Super Bowl. I believe Don McCafferty of the Colts was the first one, and I think that George Seifert,
in his rookie year.
It just doesn't happen. But I'd still be surprised if the Ravens prioritize that, because I do think that their priority is just find the guy that's going to be here for 20 years, ideally. It's interesting, right? Vance Joseph's name would fit in that category as well. Brian Flores would fit in that category, not a first-time head coach. But that's Mike Golic's opinion, that given that you want to win a Super Bowl right now, it's an experienced head coach that you should be looking for.
Wasn't his first year head coaching, Gruden and
Well, yeah, he wasn't. But there's a difference between first year head.
Right, I know, but it was first year with the team.
Yeah. But that fits the bill of going and getting Kevin Stefanski. He's saying it can't be Jesse Minter, it can't be Clint Kubiak, because they'd be first year head coaches. And that just, again, it's very rare. It's very rare, extraordinarily rare, that it's happened with a first-year head coach to win a Super Bowl. But it doesn't mean that it can't. At some point, I think one's going to. Maybe it'll be whoever it is that the Ravens hire, if they hire a first-time head coach. Today's show is also brought to you by, we'll make this one brought to you by County Sports Zone. CountySports.zone is the website. Everything you need to know about high school sports you can find by going to CountySports.zone, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. We will pause John Harbaugh and Ravens coaching conversation for just a minute when we come back in. A broadcasting legend who's a Maryland alum, a Maryland native, and used to work at WBAL, Pam Ward, announced her retirement from sports broadcasting. We're going to catch up with Pam Ward when we come back in. It is a Wednesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
The weather's getting cooler, so when you and your family are picking out a place to dine, be it lunch or dinner, let's make it nice and easy. Now, with 2 great locations, the Costas Inn remains your #1 destination. Whether you want to get steamed crabs and the full Costas menu out at the original location at 4100 North Point Boulevard, or sample the complete menu minus the steamed crabs at the new location above the grandstand at the Timonium Racetrack, Costas is your place to go. Check out the website, CostasInn.com, for a look at the menu, and if you want to plan that crab feast, call 410-477-1975. The Costas Inn.
Get in the game with Volo Sports. With over 15 sports to choose from, join a league or grab a Volo membership for discounted play, free daily pickups, fitness classes, and exclusive events. But the best part? A portion of every league fee helps the Volo Kids Foundation provide free sports to over 5,000 kids across Baltimore City each year. Don't miss out. Early pricing for the winter season ends December 12th. Final registration deadline is January 15th. Sign up now at volosports.com/Baltimore.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The latest edition of Pressbox is available now, and it's our annual Best Of issue, celebrating the top people, performances, and moments of 2025 in local sports. On the cover, we recognize 4 of the most significant athletes of the year: Orioles pitcher Trevor Rogers, Navy quarterback Blake Horvath, Maryland basketball star Derek Queen, and our 2025 Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Ravens safety Kyle Hamilton. Pressbox is available for free at over 250 locations throughout the region, including your Baltimore area High's dairy stores. Plus, you can read the entire issue online at PressBoxOnline.com, where you can also find great betting advice and the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps.
This January, go for the gold at Live Casino and enter to win the ultimate winter experience. Earn the entire month of January, and on Saturday, January 24th, you could be one of 25 lucky winners to take their place on the podium and win a share of $50,000 in prizes, including a trip to the 2026 Winter Games in Milano Cortina. Let the games begin at Live Casino. At Arundel Mills, must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here on GCR to continue along on a Wednesday edition of the program. I've been looking forward to having this conversation because, and I don't want to tell her how old I was, but I listened to our next guest on WBAL years ago when I was a younger man. And I've watched an awful lot of noon college football in my life, and her voice has been a big part of my sports viewing experience. She is a Maryland alum, and one of the places that she had her start at in her career was at WBAL here in Baltimore, and she just recently announced her retirement from ESPN. She is the legendary Pam Ward, and she is with us now here on GCR. Pam, it's Glenn here in Baltimore. It's really great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us, and congratulations on an amazing career.
Yeah, thank you very much, Glenn. And yeah, I left BAL, gosh, it's been almost 30 years since I left WBAL.
I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell you.
You were just a wee thing.
I was a young man who wanted to do this for a living, and I was listening, and I was always a fan, and it's awesome to chat with you. Pam, can you take me through? It's funny. My friend and sometimes broadcast partner Jamie Watson just sent me a message about how important you were to her as someone who wanted to believe that they could do this. When you were at WBAL, I'm not doubting that you were confident in your abilities, but knowing what the landscape looked like, were you confident that you were always going to be able to get the opportunities to do this and to have the amazing type of career that you've had?
Absolutely not. And I think you hit on the word that became, I think, more and more obvious to me especially as the years went on, is the word opportunity. And there were not a lot of opportunities. And I always wanted to be, since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a play-by-play announcer. And when I was little, there were no women. Phyllis George was the first one to get on TV for sports as a host for CBS NFL coverage. And that was like a huge deal. But she was a former Miss America. And having not been in a Miss America competition, I know it's shocking. There weren't a lot of opportunities, certainly. But by the time I was at BAL, I had already started to dabble. ESPN actually hired me to do some analysis. This is way back before they had, they've had the entire tournament now for several years, the NCAA women's basketball tournament. So I just wanted to get my foot in the door. I started as an analyst, the most underqualified analyst ever. But you say, absolutely, you say yes. And Beth Mowens actually was my play-by-play person when we did an NCAA regional out in Seattle. It was probably when I was with BAL or maybe WTEM in Washington right before that. So there were not a lot of opportunities, but Glenn, I didn't have a plan B. So I knew I just wanted to kind of forge ahead. And I absolutely knew that ESPN was the place to be, because they were, and for decades after that, they were the place for women's sports. And I knew that that was where I wanted to be. I went as an anchor when ESPN News started in 1996, but had them right in my contract, I'd have to keep doing play-by-play. And fortunately, within about 6 years, I was able to parlay that into entirely doing play-by-play, which was, a dream come true.
Pam, we associate you with college football, right? And obviously, famously, the first female to ever call national college football. How did that come about, and what did it mean? Those words to me are very powerful, right? But what did it mean to you to be able to sort of break that barrier?
Yeah, I don't think it really hit me until after the fact, but I could tell you exactly how it started. It was 2000, the year 2000, and Rudy Martzke, who was a sports television, sports broadcasting columnist for USA Today.
At the time, the only one. Right?
He was the one-man band. He was it. But he wrote a column, and it would have been the summer of, or maybe early summer or early fall, about how women are only sideline reporters in football. And I had been a sideline reporter, disastrously so. I did a whole SEC season when I was working at BAL, and I knew it wasn't for me. I knew I wanted to be in the booth. So I told ESPN I didn't want to do it anymore. And I told myself, the next time I do a college game, I'm going to be upstairs in the booth. So anyway, Martzke wrote this column, and I took a walk around my neighborhood, and I was like, you know what, enough of this. And I went into John Walsh, brilliant man who was running ESPN at the time. And I kind of dramatically back when we had hard copies of newspapers, I dramatically threw the section in front of him and said, I don't want to read this stuff anymore. And I said, why don't we, I would love to have an opportunity. And it didn't take him long at all. I think before I even left the room, he's like, okay, we're going to make this happen. So I think I did 3 games that first year, and then 11 full seasons after that.
Pam Ward is with us here on GCR. Pam, how did you handle the scrutiny of being a female broadcaster in a male-dominated sport, and knowing that a lot of the audience still to this day, there's still a lot of people that in 2026 would say, I don't want to hear what a woman thinks about this. How did you handle all of that as you were finding your own footing in the sport, in the broadcasting world?
Well, sometimes not well, but the one thing I think that did help me was back in 2000, this is before Twitter was a thing.
Yeah.
So what we had back then was you would have people make comments, let's say the Baltimore Sun would write something, and then there would be comments. And I learned very quickly not to read the comments. Don't Google yourself, But I did let the pressure get to me, and I know that and again, when I did it, I thought, hey, this will be cool. Let's do this. But I think the scrutiny and the criticism, I got some good old fashioned snail mail, through the Postal Service, with just horrible, terrible personal, ridiculous comments, and, saying things that I didn't say. And even as of a couple of years ago, or not even that, more recently than that, people say, hey, I just heard you call the whatever, Michigan State Northwestern football game. And I'm like, you know what? I haven't called a college football game since 2011. So, and I think that's part of it too. More and more women are doing it. And I guess they assume it's me. So people are still hating on me for doing that. But yeah, Glenn, I learned quickly to stay away from it. And I'm just thankful that Twitter wasn't a thing then, because I think it would have been absolutely brutal.
Pam, you brought up something earlier about you went to ESPN because they had women's sports.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I associate you so much with, because of my age and just being a kid that wanted to watch college football. But obviously you've been doing so much of basketball and women's sports and things in recent years. Was it your desire to be calling women's sports and like football was just what was available and so you did it? Or like, can you take me through what that was for you and what you wanted to do between men's and women's sports?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always loved women's basketball. I went to the University of Maryland, as you mentioned, back. Chris Weller was the head coach. They went to the Final Four in 1989. I won't say I played. I sat on the bench in high school, but I loved that. And I realistically knew that if I would have to start doing women's sports if I wanted to be a play-by-play announcer, because that's just the way it was. And unfortunately, I think that still is the way it is to a large degree. But I had always wanted to call football. Football growing up was my favorite sport. But it wasn't like a means to an end. And I know some people don't feel, I don't know if validate is the right word, but feel if you have not done men's sports, then it doesn't really count. I just had a real affinity for it, and I was a big advocate. ESPN has great softball coverage. I got in on that. I love softball. That turned out to be my favorite sport to call. But yeah, back then it was basically, Glenn, I just wanted to get in, and I knew that women's sports were my gateway. And the football thing just kind of organically happened. I mean, if Rudy Martzke didn't write that column, I don't know if I would have necessarily said anything, because it wasn't like my goal going in. Certainly is, I want to call college football. I was calling basketball, softball, and I was perfectly content with that.
What has it meant to you to be doing, particularly women's basketball, during this unbelievable rise over the course of the last 10, 15 years? And not to take anything away from like what Cheryl Miller did, obviously in the 1980s. Like we pretend like women's basketball only became a thing, but it's just the way that it's infiltrated pop culture and everything that's happened. And for you to be so associated with it, like what has that meant to you to be a part of that ride here in, I guess, what we now call the later stage of your broadcasting career?
I never thought I'd live to see the day that this would, and it exploded. You're right, very quickly. And some people, especially people at ESPN, I don't think thought women's basketball existed until 1995 when UConn won the championship. And I really, all kidding aside, I think UConn winning in 95 helped ESPN kind of wake up and go, hey, there's women's basketball out there. And they kind of, their coverage got to be more and more. But, but over the last few years, it's the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, which is, I first covered her when she was a sophomore at Iowa. And I remember talking to her. She's 19, and she was far more mature than I'll ever be. She just was like the perfect person to talk about handling scrutiny. I mean, and she has people coming at her from all angles, not necessarily negative, but, there's a lot on her now. Gosh, I think she's going to turn 24 later this month. So she's still a kid. And, but as far as me being able to ride this wave, it's been amazing because, I covering the WNBA the last couple of years, and the Las Vegas Aces have sold out like 3 consecutive seasons, and the Indiana Fever were sort of not a dying franchise, but even when Tamika Catchings played, who's my all-time favorite, they still didn't even get like a half full house. And all of a sudden, Caitlin, and I think just Caitlin playing put a lot more eyes on the sport. So people watch Caitlin and they go, holy, Tiffany Mitchell is great, and Angel Reese, and you could name, Kelsey Plum, you could name Asia Wilson, who is maybe the best player in the world right now. And I think the Caitlin effect put more eyes on the sport, and people were showing up and then watching when they hadn't before, and they're like, man, these are really good athletes, and it's a great sport. So it's been amazing. And again, it happened like in a very short period of time, maybe 2 or 3 years, and that's trickled over into the other ones, right? Like volleyball has gotten a huge following, right? And there's pro leagues for that in North America now. So it's really been. I'm just really glad that I was around to get in on that, or to be a part of that, and because it's it was a long time coming, and there's just so much now, and that leads again more opportunity. So there are more things being broadcast and more opportunities for people to get in on it, and better opportunities for the athletes.
So then I have to ask the dumb guy question: why now, right? Like you're in the midst of this unbelievable moment, like, and why step away?
Well, I wanted to certainly slow down. Because that's one thing that has evolved with everything being on, right? Is all the seasons kind of blend into each other.
Yeah.
You do WNBA, and I would only have. It would be rare if I had a couple of basketball games before Christmas, and now like you're doing games the first week of November, and the travel. There are times I was only home like 2 nights a week. And as you guys probably know, traveling to college towns sometimes
not the easiest, not metropolitan airports available.
Yes,
yeah.
And with all due respect to Syracuse, I don't need to be going back to Syracuse in February to call games. It's just it was that. And then as soon as college basketball's over, softball starts in February now.
Yeah.
So it became a little bit of a grind. I certainly wanted to slow down. I would love to still be involved and call WNBA games. Whether it's for a team or one of the other networks are getting involved now, which I think is a great thing. So there are other things, but I really wanted to slow down. And I got to tell you, I've had the last month, I'm just hanging at the beach with my dog. So that's not a bad way to spend December.
That does not seem so bad, Pam. That seems pretty good. We all associate you with certain things. Are there moments from your time at ESPN that maybe people wouldn't know about, like, relationships, or a game that you called that was meaningful to you that maybe wasn't the championship or something along those lines that stand out most to you?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had written some more things down while I was doing these things, but the biggest thing that I miss, like I don't miss, as I said, I don't miss going on the road and having to deal with travel hassles, which have gotten worse. You miss the relationships that you develop with people. And, I'm so fortunate that, Pat Summit, and, I could just go down. It would take forever to list all the people that I've had the opportunity to cover over the years. Gino Auriemma at UConn he's the best coach I've ever been around, regardless of sport. He's just brilliant, and he's funny. And I wish I could repeat some of the things he has said to me over the years, because he's Philly kind of smart assy kind of way, and in a good way. But it's just, and then the people that I worked with, that's been, because some of my best friends are the people that were my analysts. So that's who I miss. And it's been like kind of emotional, because a lot of them have gotten in touch with me, and that's what you miss. Going on the road, you're on the road, you miss your family and your friends back home, but you have your own family with them, and that kind of sucks, because it's like, now I don't know when I'm going to see them.
That video that they put out, and you mentioned Tamika, right? And like, and what, like that. How do you even watch it? Like, how do you? I barely know you, and I was emotional watching.
Oh, that's sweet.
It.
Yeah, I had to hit pause quite a few times, and especially again, Tamika Catchings is the greatest. I mean, she's not not necessarily the most physically skilled, but she played her butt off every single second, every single day, and is the sweetest. I mean, I can't say enough nice things about her. And fortunately, ESPN hired her to be a broadcaster. I got to know her as an athlete and as a human being. She's just a sweet person. And that meant a lot, because, she's Tamika freaking Catchings. And Stephanie White also was on there, and Jenny Dalton-Hill, who was my softball analyst the last few years. And those are my people, those two guys, because I've worked with them the most the last few years. And they're the ones that really kind of got to me.
That's really cool. Pam, the other part of this jumps out at me is you were at Maryland before Maryland was known as a broadcasting school, which now I'm not trying to suggest that Maryland's Syracuse, but we're seeing.
Did you go to Syracuse?
I did. I went to Maryland, ironically.
Yes.
But But like, it's felt like in the last 10 to 20 years, like now everywhere you look, it's major league play-by-play guys that came out of the Maryland program. Like, what has it meant to you to see the rise of the broadcast journalism program at Maryland, and how many more Maryland broadcasters there have been?
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? I mean, because we at ESPN we have a lot of Syracuse people and Northwestern people.
Yeah.
But yeah, Maryland. I mean, we got Scott Van Pelt. We got all sorts of people who come through there. And it's when I was there, we had WMUC. Did you work at MUC? Glenn?
I did briefly. Yeah, very briefly.
The campus radio station, which is where that's where I started doing games, because they had had an opportunity to call games, but mostly as an analyst, because the sports director would always take play-by-play for the for the sports they wanted to do. But yeah, I think it's great, and just to see the way it's developed, bringing George Solomon in, the Maryland School of Journalism, I think it's great. And as you said, it's not just Syracuse anymore, and just I think Maryland's proximity, being so close to Baltimore and Washington, and I think it's amazing. In Maryland, unlike when I went in the last century, it's kind of tough to get into Maryland now. When I was in state, I think when I got in, if my check cleared, I could go.
Yeah,
but
it wasn't that difficult. You know what, Pam? There were other schools I couldn't get into, and I was able to get into Maryland at the time.
Well, you're an in-state guy, right?
Yeah, I am in-state. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that helped,
100%.
and tuition was dirt cheap back when I went. But yeah, I'm very proud now, and I've been back to a couple of events there at Maryland. It's just great to talk to all the young students who are getting into it, and they're getting, again, opportunities, because they have TV, they can stream stuff now, so there's a lot more that they can leave with than certainly when I went to school.
And then I'll wrap with this, Pam Ward, because when you were at BAL, you were there right when like the Ravens stuff was breaking, or like the Browns move was breaking, right? If I had told you then that franchise would become one of the model franchises in all of American pro sports, what would you have said?
I would have been very surprised, because so before I went to WTEM, okay, so going backwards, BAL, before that WTEM in Washington, and before that I was at WKNR in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was there at that startup, and I had an opportunity to come home to TEM because I did want to come back. And I love Cleveland, but home is home. And I was there. I was there less than a year in Cleveland. I was there when the Indians lost 105 games. They played at the old stadium where it's just like in the movie Major League. There were like 12 people there. But that was the beginning. They had like Jim Thome, and Sandy Alomar I think was in his second season. So they had the beginnings of greatness, but it also was. It was Bill Belichick's first year as the head coach of the Browns, and boy, what a charmer he wasn't. I mean, and he would show up for his coach's show literally with a sweatshirt with some and he would turn it inside out because it was a logo maybe they didn't want on the air or something like that. So that was when I was there. I'm like, man, this franchise. And then of course when they moved to Baltimore, Belichick didn't come with them, which he did okay in New England. Yeah, I was, having been around that Browns franchise at the time, I was like, this has a ways to go to be an elite franchise, and it's absolutely remarkable. Ozzie Newsome and all those guys, former Brown Ozzie Newsome, and all those guys who developed it, as you said, into one of the best franchises in the league.
Pam Ward, an unbelievable run, and I can't say enough. You're someone that I looked up to, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us. And I'm going to be over on WBAL Friday night. I'd like to have you come over and share some moments over on your old radio station.
Yeah, let's go back home. Why not?
I would love to do that.
Okay.
Pam, thank you for taking the time for us.
All right, thanks, Glenn and Griffin. See you guys.
That's Pam Ward, an unbelievable run at ESPN for Pam Ward, and really cool to catch up with her and discuss her incredible career, and really appreciate her taking the time. I promise we're going to talk more about John Harbaugh, and we're going to talk more about where the Ravens are and what's next. We're going to keep doing plenty of that, but I thought it was more than worthy of spending some time chatting with Pam Ward today. We'll come back in a little bit more about that. We'll get a tidbit. We'll get tubular as we wind down for a Wednesday edition of GCR. Get in the game with Volo Sports. With over 15 sports to choose from, join a league or grab a Volo membership for discounted play, free daily pickups, fitness classes, and exclusive events. But the best part? A portion of every league fee helps the Volo Kids Foundation provide free sports to over 5,000 kids across Baltimore City each year. Don't miss out. Early pricing for the winter season ends December 12th. Final registration deadline is January 15th. Sign up now at volosports.com/Baltimore.
This January, go for the gold at Live Casino and enter to win the ultimate winter experience. Earn the entire month of January, and on Saturday, January 24th, you could be one of 25 lucky winners to take their place on the podium and win a share of $50,000 in prizes, including a trip to the 2026 Winter Games in Milano Cortina. Let the games begin at Live Casino. At Arundel Mills, must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The weather's getting cooler, so when you and your family are picking out a place to dine, be it lunch or dinner, let's make it nice and easy. Now, with 2 great locations, the Costas Inn remains your #1 destination. Whether you want to get steamed crabs and the full Costas menu out at the original location at 4100 North Point Boulevard, or sample the complete menu minus the steamed crabs at the new location above the grandstand at the Timonium Racetrack, Costas is your place to go. Check out the website, costasin.com, for a look at the menu, and if you want to plan that crab feast, call 410-477-1975. The Costas Inn.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Looking for Baltimore's premier waterfront dining experience? Head to Nick's Fish House, located in the Baltimore Peninsula. Enjoy crabs all year long, plus happy hour Monday through Thursday from 3 to 6. Planning a celebration? From rehearsal dinners to corporate crab feasts, Nick's is the spot to make it unforgettable. And the fun doesn't stop there. Live music fills the air every Thursday through Sunday. Check out the full lineup at nicksfishhouse.com. Nick's, it's where Baltimore comes to eat, drink, and play by the water.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
All right, back in here on GCRs, continue along on a Wednesday edition of the program. I don't know. Everybody keeps asking what's the time frame, right? And like, I don't know. I don't know what the time frame's going to be. These are from Bet Online. This is the offshore book that Griffin's going to pull up about the odds. I find it wild that they have Chris Shula. Like, I don't know what to make of that. The offshore book has Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator, and of course grandson of legendary former Baltimore Colts coach Don Shula.
Ah, see.
That's
why.
I don't understand what the connection would be. I just don't know why he'd be the favorite. That makes no sense. And he's only a mild favorite.
I mean, there's been several. Yeah, well, I mean, since last night, I guess everything's changing. But yeah.
Yeah, Action Network pulled their odds from Kalshi, the prediction market, and so like
I think they had Minter one.
And I would be stunned that to me, if I was establishing odds, Minter would be one.
And then there was somewhere else that I pulled up last night, and Kubiak was one. So like.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but like Kubiak makes sense. And again. Short of us finding out that like the Ravens are prioritizing having experience, or
that guy right there, 40-1, Greg Roman.
Greg Roman, yeah, I don't think it's going to be Greg Roman. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, this is from Kalshi. They have yes odds on Jesse Minter at 32%.
Wow.
And yes odds on Brian Flores at 18%. Now again, Kalshi odds are affected by who's betting. That's not. Like those odds move on those prediction markets based on who's buying the coins. So I get it.
Yeah.
I think Jesse Minter should be the favorite based on, again, looking the part. We know the Ravens love Mike Macdonald. He's the one that looks the most like the next Mike Macdonald. The Harbaugh connection probably doesn't matter at this point, but there is still a connection to Joe Ortiz. And Joe Ortiz obviously was very close with Eric DeCosta, and they were still trade partners this year. That goes beyond Jim and John Harbaugh, because somebody would say, well, why does the connection to the Harbaughs matter anymore? Well, it's not really even about that. It's about the connection with Joe Ortiz and the Ravens, and that almost certainly, because Jim Harbaugh is not going anywhere, Joe Ortiz would love to see his guy be rewarded, and the fact that Jesse Minter was in Baltimore previously. To me, all of that is why I would establish him as the favorite. But being the favorite in a coaching search, this isn't like, to me, being the favorite in a college coaching search where sometimes it's incredibly obvious who the guy should be. Like sometimes it's in a college football or college basketball coaching search, if there's an alum who is succeeding elsewhere, if there is someone in a geographically close school that is having, like, the guy at North Texas getting hired at Oklahoma State makes all the sense in the world, right? And, like, it's exactly the type of hire that you make. It's abundantly clear. If someone had been on the staff before and went somewhere else and had success, then all those things make it obvious. In the NFL, it's not quite that. In the NFL, short of, again, there being very public information, you're just, in creating odds, you're posturing. I'd make Jesse Minter the odds-on favorite because he had been in Baltimore. They know him. He had gone on to a place where he had been around their former scouting director, who's still very close to their general manager, and he's young and looks like someone that could be here for a long time. Check, 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 check. But that isn't me saying I think Jesse Minter is going to be the next head coach, because I don't think the Ravens are going to tilt the coaching search towards anyone. I think they're going to search for a coach. And if that search leads them to, as much as we all kind of laugh at Cliff Kingsbury, if they go through the process and they talk to people and he wows in interviews, then Cliff Kingsbury could be the guy. I do think that was a plant yesterday from an agent to try to stir up interest in Cliff Kingsbury in Baltimore, because there's no obvious reason why people would be talking about Cliff Kingsbury in Baltimore. He's just a guy that's available. That's it. It's the only reason. Yeah, it was Diana Rossini, who said many, and I'm not trying to, I know it sounds like I'm accusing Diana Rossini of, doing an agent's bidding, but I don't know that. I have no reason to know. It's just that there's no logical reason for Diana Rossini to say many believe Baltimore paired with Lamar Jackson will be the ideal landing spot for the now former Commanders offensive coordinator. Maybe that's many people around Cliff Kingsbury think that. Yeah, that's where he'd like to be. But to suggest like around the league, oh, dude, you know who they're gonna go get, like that. Unless it's a very specific group of people that I just don't have any. There is none of that. I think the Ravens are going to do a search, and so I think it would be crazy for anyone to be a notable favorite. And if I'm being fair to the Bodog or the what are they called now? Bet Online, to their odds, they are at least fairly even. But still, I have no idea why Chris Shula would be plus 300, and then Clint Kubiak at plus 900. What am I missing there? And it doesn't mean that Chris Shula might not be the Ravens' next head coach. I just don't know why in establishing odds that would be the case. Clint Kubiak behind Jesse Minter because of the connection with Gary Kubiak, because we know Steve Bisciotti liked Gary Kubiak, because we know the Ravens liked Mike Macdonald. Clint Kubiak, to me, would be the second favorite if I was establishing odds because of connections. But I don't know that the connections are going to matter. There was no obvious connection to John Harbaugh. None. He was just a guy that was getting interviews. I mean, the only connection was that his brother briefly played for the franchise years before. That's it. List of connections. a brief stint. Brian Flores. There's two weird ones about Brian Flores. The first one is he did sue the NFL. And while clearly he's been able to get a job since then, he has not been blackballed the way that Colin Kaepernick was. And maybe the NFL realized because of the Kaepernick thing, like, we better not do this again. Maybe that's over and everybody's agreed. Like, as Rita and I were talking about, maybe the league realizes it might be the way that we look the best is if Brian Flores does get another job, right? Like, that makes us look good. I don't know. I don't know the inner workings of that. I also know that in Miami there were reportedly some management problems with Brian Flores, like that his leadership became an issue.
Could it be, just he became a better coach in the time since
or some of that was overstated because they wanted to run Brian Flores out. There's lots of things that could be possible there. But it's why I'm a little bit less inclined to think the answer is Brian Flores. I do think that Kevin Stefanski could absolutely be the type that they don't tilt towards because of his experience, but they walk in, have some conversations with him, and they come away from it saying, yeah, he's really impressive. We all want to know the answer today. They're going to do a search. Like, this is not going to be, we fired John Harbaugh because we're going to go get a lot of people bring up that there's no Ben Johnson on this list. You have no idea of that. You have no clue.
No, I don't see Ben Johnson's name.
Yes, correct. You have no idea. None. Zero. Chris Shula might be the greatest coach in football history.
He's got the name.
Nobody thought Liam Cohen was that guy last year. We laughed at Liam Cohen.
You're just not giving him respect.
Right? I'm still not respecting him fully. I sound like that weirdo that they made the CBS Evening News guy trying to pronounce the name of Camden Yards. God,
I was that weirdo Ken Zales.
I was reminded. It was CBS put out this very embarrassing video last week about what. We're going to stop talking to smart people when we're going to start talking to dumber people as sources for news. And I shared something about it, and somebody
and
said,
your phone immediately started vibrating.
Well, no, I had one particular person who was like, "Oh, and wait till you find out." And they sent me this video of, and I apologize, I don't know this guy. Apparently, he was a baseball player at George Washington. His name's Tony DeCopel, I believe is his name, and he's the CBS Evening News anchor. Apparently, he played high school baseball in Maryland, once played in a game at Camden Yards. And so he did this bit because he hit a home run. And when they moved the walls back, like, he did this whole story for the morning show about going back to Camden Yards and trying to recreate the home run that he hit with the deeper wall. And the premise for the bit was very sound. It was very good. But I wanted – it was – because he kept saying Camden Yards. I'm here at Camden Yards, and it just made my ears bleed. And a friend of mine sent me this video and was like, if you think you don't like him now, wait till you hear this. And I was like, oh, God, we don't need it. We don't need it. We don't need it.
I don't know what the mark is.
We don't.
What minute mark here?
Oh, that's not the video. That's the video of the embarrassing video. I linked to the yeah, this is the Camden Yards. Oh. Yeah, it's a long piece, so I don't know where he said how many times he said. He said it multiple times, and I have no idea. But yeah, gross. We don't need to. We don't need to. I have no idea how I got there. Oh, I was mispronouncing Liam Cohen's name, so that's how I got there. Nobody thought that Liam Cohen was a rock star hire last year. How we feeling about that today? So spare me Ben Johnson has clearly worked in Chicago. Do I know that Ben Johnson's ever going to win a Super Bowl? Not a clue. No idea Ben Johnson's ever going to win a Super Bowl. The Ben Johnson comparison is the one that I think a lot of people are using in discussing why so many of us have the preference that a head coaching hire be an offensive coach. Because, like, you're watching in Detroit, where we all think the world of Dan Campbell as a leader of men, right? Like, as as the guy. But then your offensive coordinator disappears, and where's the juice? I still think Dan Campbell's a good leader of men, but they're a different team post-Ben Johnson than they were with him. And that doesn't mean they won't find another good offensive coordinator. But, and look, obviously Mike Vrabel's a defensive coach, working out quite well in New England. Obviously, Mike McDonald is a defensive coach. I'm not trying to suggest that defensive coaches can't be great coaches. I hear that Belichick fella was all right.
How many games did they win in North Carolina?
That's a fair point.
His name not on that list.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna.
Another
be
name not on the list. Maybe you'll get mad at me for even suggesting it. Kurt Signetti. Do they?
Other people
find a way to get.
I don't think there's anything about Kurt Signetti uniquely that suggests that he would translate to the NFL. I understand the Marcus Freeman thing, which is he's so young, he's so popular with young players that there's a connection there. Kurt Signetti looks like Nick Saban. Like, Nick Saban was not a good NFL coach. Nick Saban was a career college coach.
There's just something to it, though, that these are very different eras of college football.
There's something to be said for it. I'm not trying to suggest there's nothing for it, but I'm not saying you couldn't possibly make the call or find out, but I just don't think that the parallels for what you're looking for in an NFL coach are the things that you see in Kurt Signetti. And to say football's football, I don't know. I don't know if it's just football's football. I would always prefer you don't go the college route. That's, again, my personal preference is you find an offensive mind in the NFL with NFL experience. It's not to say there's never been success. Obviously, Pete Carroll had success. Now, Pete Carroll was a roundabout thing. Pete Carroll was in the NFL, was an NFL head coach, then went back to college, found success at the college level after he had succeeded or reached the pinnacle of being an NFL head coach. So to hold him up as the example of college coaches that can succeed in the NFL, well, he kind of took a circuitous route to that. So I don't know that he's a good example of why it just works. I think there's a lot more Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, Bobby Petrino. There's a lot more. It's been very difficult for college coaches to bridge the gap to being greatly successful in the modern NFL. So I'm inclined, Greg Schiano. I'm trying to think of other
failed college.
Well, either way, failed or successful. I mean, the Pete Carroll one is the one that's obvious. I'm trying to think of others that are even kind of successful. I guess Bill O'Brien had some success.
3 coaches have won a Natty and a Super Bowl.
Yeah, but most of them are from some time ago.
Yeah.
Like Bill O'Brien, I'm trying to remember what Bill O'Brien's path, because I think Bill O'Brien was in the NFL when he got the Penn State job. I don't think he was a college coach. Bill O'Brien, yeah, he had been the Patriots' offensive coordinator. So I don't know that that's a good example either. I'm trying to think of, in the modern NFL, college coaches that were just college coaches that translated to success in the NFL, and I'm just struggling to think of those guys. Like the guys that did find success were guys that Bill O'Brien, and he had mild success, right, with the Texans. But Bill O'Brien had success, but his entire background was in the NFL other than that stint at Penn State. And Pete Carroll came through the NFL in becoming a coach. So Kurt Signetti uniquely, I'm not saying it couldn't work, but uniquely Kurt Signetti has no NFL experience. And it's really tough for me to say, okay, you're trying to win a Super Bowl, go throw it to somebody who has literally no NFL experience. That sounds more like an experiment than hiring a coach. And it takes nothing away from what Kurt Signetti has done.
Well, is it a worthy experiment? I mean, yeah.
No, I would say it's not a worthy experiment.
He turned Indiana into,
this is the difference. Indiana had nothing to lose.
Okay.
Nothing to lose. Spare me, with all respect to Kurt Signetti. That's what you do if you're a bad football team and, like, we just got to do something crazy to mix it up. Now, I don't think Kurt Cignetti would want that. He appears to be in a very good position and has proven that he can win that, at least compete for a national championship, maybe win a national championship. I don't know that Kurt Cignetti would take a bad NFL job. But your team that's trying to win a Super Bowl, experiment is not the way that you go. That's reckless. That's insane. I'm not saying there couldn't be an NFL coach. I mean, I don't even know who is there a current college coach that has heavy NFL experience that I'm not thinking of? I mean, obviously Marcus Freeman played in the NFL, but he hasn't coached in the NFL.
I mean, no, like they just seemingly are just very separate.
Well, Bill O'Brien went back to college, right? Like he went to. I just can't think of anybody that would fit this bill of like an obvious, here's a college coach, because I know people talk about that, like get one of those college offensive minds.
One of the Kellys, like that's like.
Chip Kelly. I don't think you go from being the offensive coordinator at Northwestern to being the head coach. Certainly not for the Ravens. There's no world where Chip Kelly.
Just completely copy what the Eagles did with Andy Reid. Yeah, just go to Chip Kelly. So.
No, that's not going to be the answer.
Yeah, I mean Shiano and Kelly and Matt Rule.
Okay, yeah, Matt Rule would be that example, but Matt Rule certainly has not achieved anything that would make you say he would be in the mix to be the Ravens head coach.
Get Michael Vick from Norfolk State. That's the
that's the route you're going to go. Yeah,
Saban. Like that's.
So no is the answer. No.
Well, I named a couple.
What? No.
Jim Mora.
No.
I'm just naming guys.
I know you're naming. That is what you're doing. You are naming guys, Griffin. You are naming.
Deion Sanders. He played in the NFL.
He did play in the NFL. You are right about that.
Eddie George is at Tennessee State.
It's true. He also played in the NFL. You are correct.
I think that's all I got.
Yeah. No. We did a hell of a job of naming guys.
Brian Hartline played in the NFL.
We got. Brian Hartline did play in the NFL. You are naming people that played in the NFL. Aaron, I would at least interview Steve Spagnuolo. His unit has had more success against Lamar than anyone, even maybe the Steelers and the Browns. Would at least interview. His bad head coach tenure was a long time ago. I also remember there being bad blood between Steve Spagnuolo and John Harbaugh, but then ultimately, Steve, obviously that John overcame that because he ultimately hired Steve Spagnuolo. So, it'd be interesting to see if Steve Spagnuolo still has friends in the building, still has people that it was 13 and 14 that Steve Spagnuolo was in Baltimore. I mean, at this point, who's really even around in the organization from 13 and 14? I mean, you're talking about Eric, Ozzie, Steve.
Was that Zach Orr's first year?
Player? I don't
rookie
remember
year.
if he was here
14
in 13, 14.
Year.
Maybe. But Zach Orr's not going to be here almost certainly. So, would I interview him? I'm not saying I wouldn't interview him, but again, for me, like I prioritize offense over defense, and I'm just saying that's a preference. I acknowledge. And then a 66-year-old coach, it just seems unlikely that that's the route the Ravens go. Again, to your point of, well, they got to win now, I hear you. I just think they're looking for someone that they believe can win now and can win for some time to come. I would be surprised knowing their track record. But I'm not saying it'd be insane to interview him. Sure, by all means, bring in Steve Spagnuolo. Absolutely.
Brent Urban. That was his rookie year.
Was Brent Urban's rookie year? Okay, there you go. So there is someone else that he was around for. John, have you heard anything about Anthony Weaver being considered for an interview? Somebody, I think Adam Schefter put that out there. Let me make sure that's right. Anthony Weaver. I believe Adam Schefter said something about that, but yes. Adam Schefter said, another coach I expect to be interviewed for that job will be Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. Kevin Ostreicher tweeted that out. I love Anthony Weaver. On a personal level, I love Anthony Weaver. A really incredible dude. I think he's done a solid job as a coach, but I don't know that I've looked at the Dolphins defense and said, that's got to be the guy. I don't think what I would say is that's where I think the connection is the only real reason for that. I don't know that Anthony Weaver would be a hot name for any other job.
Not right now.
So why would he be the connection for the Ravens? Like,
just because he's been there, right?
Like
I
want to root. I love Anthony Weaver. And again, maybe Anthony Weaver will prove to be a great coach. And I guess in that, if you're casting a wide net, talk to everybody. But I wouldn't elevate Anthony Weaver because he played here and coached here over anybody else. It's funny because, right, like somebody would say, is Jesse Minter all that more accomplished than Anthony Weaver is? And, like, I guess my answer would be, I think slightly. I think the Chargers' defense has definitely been better than the Dolphins' defense has been. Anthony Weaver has, I believe, assistant head coach. He was assistant head coach, I think, when he was in Baltimore. So he does have that going for him. I know Drew brought up Jim Leonard's name, who I didn't realize, in addition to whatever his title is in Denver, is also the assistant head coach. And was, a wildly popular player in Baltimore. And Drew, I think, reminded me of how popular he was with the organization. Like, they loved Jim Leonard. Like, if you think the fans loved Jim Leonard, the organization loved Jim Leonard. And yes, cast a wide net, bring them all in, find out. But those are guys that don't appear to be the guys knocking on the door of being head coaches, but neither did John Harbaugh. So I'm not saying no.
How far off how much of a surprise was it that John Harbaugh got?
I don't think you can put into words how surprising it was. John Harbaugh felt like who is this guy?
We had never heard of Craig Albernash, right? Like when he...
Yeah, that's true. But in baseball circles, they would tell you that, like, he was on the cusp.
Sure.
And it's still a little bit different because we think they're trying to win a World Series, but it's not Lamar Jackson. You know what I mean? Like, the Ravens just parted ways with one of the most accomplished head coaches of all time. That's now, if you're going back to when they hired John Harbaugh and trying to make that comparison,
yeah,
John Harbaugh was wildly off the radar, wildly, and again, was not their first choice. Like, that is also part of the conversation. Maybe they will find a John Harbaugh-esque, like, wildly off the radar. But
had you heard of his name? Like, had you heard his name? Okay.
Nobody was talking. I mean, he was also a special teams coordinator.
Right.
It was crazy to think that any special teams coordinator would be in the mix for a head coaching job. The greatest special teams coordinator of all time. It was crazy to think that would be somebody that'd be in the mix to be the head coach. But it was also a different time because they were going into, they needed to draft a quarterback. The Steve McNair thing had met its end. And it was going to be a transitional time for that organization. Nobody saw them going to the AFC Championship game in 2008. No one. Inside the organization, they did not see that coming. It's maybe the most improbable thing that's ever happened in the history of Ravens football. So that did factor into why they might have been more willing to make the hire, is because, well, hey, if it takes 2 years, it takes 2 years. I don't think they have that in this moment. Ironically, it didn't, right?
Yeah,
like, it didn't take 2 years. Immediately they were successful. Complicated conversation. All right, let's get a tidbit. Tidbit is brought to you today by the print issue of Pressbox. It is the best of issue. It is available wherever you find Pressbox throughout town, including your Baltimore area High's Dairy stores. You can read it all at PressBoxOnline.com. Go pick it up for free today.
180 regular season wins for John Harbaugh. That is the 14th most all time. So
you want to name all the top 13?
Yeah, he does have 13. Where is he at? Yeah, 13 playoff wins. There are 7 guys ahead of him with 13.
So what am I doing?
Which one do you want to do?
You tell me.
I'd like to do the 13 one, but I know you don't like doing long tidbits.
All right, let's go. George Halas.
Halas is number 2 all time, 318 wins.
Bill Belichick.
Regular season wins. Belichick is 3.
Don Shula.
Don Shula, number 1. Okay.
Vince Lombardi.
No.
Okay. Tom Landry.
Yes, 5th. 250 for Tom Landry.
Chuck Noll.
Yep, 9. Still one more in the top 5 though.
Mike Tomlin.
Not well, yes, Tomlin's up there. 193 regular season wins for Tomlin, so that's 10th.
Andy Reid.
Yes, Andy Reid is 4th all time.
Is Mike McCarthy there?
Mike McCarthy, no. He is right behind John. He's got 174. Harbaugh's at 180.
Okay. How about... I'm struggling now. How about Bill Parcells?
No.
Bud Grant?
No Bud Grant either.
Yikes. I'm guessing I got to go ways back.
For one of them, yes. For two of them, yeah.
Curly Lambeau.
Curly Lambeau is 6th all time behind Tom Landry. One ahead of one other old-timer. Not quite as far back as Lambeau, but still pretty far back.
Pretty far back. Yikes. It's not Mike Ditka. It's the Raiders never kept their coaches very long. It's all right. Give me a team.
Current AFC North team.
Current AFC North.
Yeah, I don't know what division they would have been in, or if they even had divisions. But
I already said Noel, and I already said it's not Bill Cowher.
Not Cowher.
Paul Brown.
Paul Brown,
okay.
7th all time with 213 wins, and then let's see, two others. Rams.
Oh, Chuck Knox.
Yes, Knox.
Yeah.
And then Denver. Yeah, mostly
Knox
Denver.
was also like the Seahawks, I think, for a long time.
Yeah. Well, he started.
Yeah.
He started Rams, then Seattle. Buffalo between there.
And then you said how many more?
2 more, I think.
3 more. 3 more. 3 more.
Yeah, 3 more.
Lord. And
they're Denver.
Denver
in the 80s.
Denver in the 80s. Oh, Dan Reeves.
Yes,
yeah,
Dan Reeves. Dan Reeves. And then one is still active.
One is still active. Okay, so that's either Pete Carroll.
Not Pete
Carroll. Oh, no, he's not active anymore. He got fired. Sean Payton.
Yes, Sean Payton is 4 wins ahead of John Harbaugh right now.
Okay.
And then the other one, his name is still active, but this guy himself is not active.
His name is still active, but this guy himself is not active. Marty Schottenheimer.
Marty Schottenheimer. Marty Schottenheimer's top 10 as well. Yeah, there you go. He's 8th. Marty Schottenheimer's 8th.
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
That
was
was
top
adventure.
14, top 15. Pete Carroll's 16th, so you got the top 16 basically.
Here's what's coming up totally tubular-wise tonight. Tubular is brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel. They're giving away a trip to the Winter Games. What are we doing here? Get there. Go to livech.com in order to find out more. You can also win your share of $50,000 at Live Casino and Hotel right now. Maryland hosts Indiana tonight. Godspeed, boys. 6:30 on
Final
Big
score
Ten
predictions.
Network. Yeah. Maryland 67, Indiana 74.
You think they're scoring 67?
I know. I hear you. ESPN Plus, Loyola and Army at 6 o'clock.
At least we'd have something to celebrate if
Loyola,
they get the 60s.
there you go. Loyola needs a win. God, they need a win, man. I did their game on Saturday. It was rough. Bucknell. What's that?
Who do they have tonight?
Army on the road. Not great. Bucknell and Navy tonight at 7 on ESPN Plus as well. Everything else, go to glennclarkradio.com and find it there. Non-sports-wise?
I can't remember. Probably not then.
Cool. You got it. Yep, that's enough. That's probably not.
Season 2, Beast Games on Prime Video.
Okay, so nothing then. Very good. Thanks today to Mike Golic. Thanks to Jonas Shaffer. Thanks to Pam Ward. We'll get it up in the greatest hits section of the
Marcelo Hernandez, comedy special on Netflix.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I find him mildly funny. I do enjoy him. I don't know if I'm going to like a special. Tab at glennclarkradio.com.
That's a good tab.
Tomorrow, we're going to be starting early. We're going to be starting at like 9:30 tomorrow morning. So be with us early for tomorrow's show. We will be live at CQ Arena over at Towson. We will. Drew's going to come join us. We will be talking Ravens and John Harbaugh and next coach. We'll also have Pat Scarry and Towson AD Steve Eigenbrot stop by during the course of the show. We had planned this ahead of time before we knew there was going to be a coach firing, and so.
And now it's even better.
Yeah, it's a little awkward, but look, man, also before Towson lost 3 straight basketball games. Everything really worked out well for this. Somebody would say, why didn't you cancel
But they call us? That's why they called us.
Did they?
They needed the stoppers.
That's why we're going over there tomorrow?
Yeah, we're the stoppers.
All right, very good. Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Volo Sports, Live Casino and Hotel, as well as the Costas Inn, 1-800-GAMBLER, helpmygamblingproblem.org, Nick's Fish House, your Baltimore area High's Dairy Stores, and more. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Wednesday evening. Go Maryland, go Navy, go Loyola. Duke sucks.